Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn, and I'm thrilled to have with me today Esther Holland. She is a multiple-time entrepreneur. She's founded a lot of companies herself. She's also the founder of GroundControl and author of both the corporate startup and the new upcoming book, which we're going to talk about today, Innovation Accounting, with our good friend Dan Toma as well. Esther, it's good having you here today.
Thank you, Nicholas. I'm thrilled to be on your show.
Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Perfect. So if people haven't heard about you before, could you just give us a brief background as to where you got started and how you got to where you are now?
You said brief, right? Well, I think I stumbled in the tech scene because of my background in information science in Amsterdam. And at some point, we with a group of tech entrepreneurs decided that we wanted to bring the ecosystem of Silicon Valley and Boulder into Amsterdam. And then we started to do a lot of things for startups as well. And that path led me to working with startups, helping them, mentoring them, investing in them. And all of that led me to a lean startup and getting to know all of the people that I wrote the books with and founded my company with.
And that's brought you to where you are now. You're working with GroundControl. What exactly do you do there?
Well, GroundControl is a SaaS platform that helps you do innovation accounting within corporate. So whenever you have to manage multiple startups within a corporate, so corporate venture building, the platform helps you track their progress and find and show the indicators that are needed to see that progress, which are never the indicators that you expect.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to speaking about today. You mentioned this phrase, innovation accounting. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question, really. I've been talking to a lot of people from finance and treasury lately, from corporates that have approached me because of all the announcements on my LinkedIn profile. And it's not as they think, innovating within accounting or automating the processes within accounting, but it's rather the twin of normal financial accounting, and the twin that you need if you want to do startups within your corporate. And for those startups, you do not have any financial numbers or indicators to show whether or not it's going well or not well. So is it a success or not? Do I need to continue? And since startups are inherently different than any project that you are doing within your corporate, and can't be really judged or managed by the normal corporate processes, that means you need a different way to see if they're doing well or not. And that's where the innovation accounting comes from. It has been coined by Eric Ries in one of his or in his book, The Lean Startup, where he says innovation accounting is essentially the metrics that the team needs to be accountable for the decision. So whenever they do experiments, it makes sense to do that in a data-driven way to be held accountable for the decision you make on top of that experiment.
Now, sorry, you mentioned that a lot of companies can't use the traditional financial metrics for innovation projects. Why not? Obviously, you and I know the answer to this, but what's wrong, or what are the problems associated with trying to use the traditional management metrics or financial metrics for innovation projects or new ventures?
Well, a corporate, the whole system of your corporate is built around optimizing your current business models. It's around executing those, optimizing them and growing them. So all of your process and all of your indicators are steer towards that. Whereas a startup, as Steve Blank says, is basically a team that is looking to prove that a business model that they thought of is even possible, something with a new technology or a whole new way of selling things. So it's a high risk venture that you're trying to make work, essentially. And that whole search bit, so that whole time that you're searching whether or not this will work, will show you nothing if measured or managed by those corporate processes that are used to working with business models that have proven to work already. So you're just optimizing on those that actually do work already. So in that search bit is a bit of a black hole, even for analysts that have said, hey, for instance, Airbnb, we've watched them for a long time as financial analysts, but we haven't seen anything, so we've dismissed it. But 10 years later, all of a sudden, overnight, they became a success. There's a hockey stick in terms of financial indicators. Why couldn't we have seen that coming? Because they weren't looking at other indicators. Hey, couldn't we have seen something before that? Aren't there indicators that can show us that flat line isn't a flat line? In fact, it's maybe early evangelist showing they have interest in this product, and the mass market still has to move along that way. So whenever you will start a startup or do corporate venturing, that means that search period, de-risking your business model from begin to end, is a validation, is a learning process, a lean startup process of methodically, systematically testing if that business model can work or not, usually done with the early evangelists that will show you that if there is interest or not. And then you need different indicators than you're used to, because you can't see that with the indicators that you're used to within your corporate, with your project management or your financial accounting, because those only look at the business model that already exists.
Now, there's probably some people who are very entrepreneurial and who want to start companies and who have big visions for their companies, or maybe even are running companies, who think that you should stay away from these bureaucratic management methods, that's actually what stops innovation. And they would prefer to just be able to go out and build things and scale them. What's the reason why we need metrics at all, even if they are tailored towards innovation accounting?
Well, there's a reason that Eric Ries coined that innovation accounting bit in his book, right? So as a team, you want to be accountable for the decisions you made, and you want the decisions to be made on data rather than gut feeling. Of course, you need that entrepreneurial gut feeling that these people are talking about, right? I fully agree. You need to make these decisions and these leaps of faith sometimes, but at least you want to understand that you're building on top of something that is true, rather than it falls apart at the end when you've invested a lot of money in that. And that principle is something that you can take and put on top of all of the layers, not just teams, but if you manage teams, if you're investing in these startups, that you want to understand that there are indicators that this is true or not true, and not realize that after 3 to 4 years. As I have with one of my first startups that I did for a corporate, as well as if you are a corporate and you have to, and you understand that if you really want to look for new business models because your old one is fading or dying, then you have to manage multiple of them because, well, only one won't do, right? You have to invest in multiple to be able to find that one that actually will be the successful one. So then it makes sense that you want to look at where your resources could be invested best or most successful. So then it does make sense to actually start measuring to at least make it as successful as possible. Because I was just going to say we're on the same you can't pick the winners, right? But you can allocate the most budget to the ones that seem most promising in terms of validating and indicating indicators from the market.
Absolutely. I had Dan on a while back on the podcast, and he was talking about this concept of one of the innovation accounting metrics that you talk about in the book is called speed of learning. Now, to a lot of people, that sounds a bit wishy-washy, if I can be so bold. What exactly is speed of learning, and how can you use this as an actual measure of whether or not you're progressing or not?
Yeah, it's something we call either speed of learning, learning velocity, or learning ratio, whatever you want to call that. And why is that? Yeah, why do people call it wishy-washy?
The sort of people who they think, look, if you can't put a set number on it, and someone's talking about, oh, we did some experiments and we learned some stuff, but does it get us closer to our goal? I don't know. That's where people aren't really sure about how to use this concept.
Yeah, and the speed of learning might sound wishy-washy, but it actually is a number if you measure it, right? It becomes a number whenever you keep tabs for it. And I think we have to realize whenever we want to do corporate venturing or corporate startups or startups, whatever you want to call them in your company, that if you want to do those well and successfully, you have to have a systematic way of validating these new business models. So either lean startup or any other methodology that seems right to do that will help you find these business models in a way. So it's a systematic approach to that, and that means that in its core, the people doing that, their core business becomes learning. Right? Ashmaria even calls it continuous learning. So the speed of their learning will actually tell you if you have the best people to do that, or if there's something going on in the teams that you can help take away because they're not learning, and that should be their core business. So maybe if the learning velocity isn't high enough, there are stakeholders asking for these thick slide decks of things that they want to understand every single week. That have nothing to do with the normal indicators that you should be asking, or nothing to do with finding validation for the idea. So they shouldn't be doing that. But still, then the learning velocity is, I think, one of the key metrics of innovation accounting. Simply because it all starts with the teams. Your teams need to be good learners. They need to have speed in the way they experiment, because every experiment brings you closer to decide whether or not this is something that you should continue or not, brings you closer to finding either the business model or to decide to stop because it's not getting anywhere.
So learning is not what some people think of when they think, I'm learning how to code, I'm learning how to sort of design in Photoshop. This is more about validation. It's about actually testing something specific.
Exactly. So the learning has to do with the methodically. I stumble on English words now. Methodically testing whether or not your business model can become true. So it's about de-risking, and every experiment is de-risking that, whether it's a validation or an invalidation of what you're thinking. That helps you learn something, and that something brings you closer to that business model or deciding to stop it. So that's why learning is more about understanding whether or not your idea can work.
Absolutely. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. That sounds like a really excellent measurement metric to use. What other sort of innovation accounting metrics do you go through in the book that you find really helpful?
Well, maybe I can explain a little bit about what kind of metrics we're looking at in the first place, because learning velocity is just one metric that we're looking at. Because I think it's good to understand that you need multiple metrics to understand what you're doing, and then you need metrics to understand how an individual team is doing, a startup, a venture, to understand how they're doing as a team and how they're validating. But you also need to understand how all of the teams in your funnel are doing. And then you need to understand if that's managed correctly, if you're investing in the right things, and you need to understand how that connects to your strategy and whether or not you need to invest more in ventures or maybe less, depending on your portfolio as a whole. And then tapping into learning velocity again, you need to understand the capabilities of these people that are doing your learning, as well as the culture that they're in, to see that they get the best, that you get the best people for it. So there's multiple layers that need indicators in innovation accounting, and it depends on the questions that you're asking, what kind of indicators you want to see for those questions.
So let's maybe take two different layers and go through one of the metrics in each. Let's go through maybe one which is at the team layer, focusing on one very specific venture, and one more at the portfolio level, where management is looking at multiple ventures. Let's start maybe with the first one at the team level.
Yeah, the team level we discussed, right, is the learning velocity. So how are they doing? The one that so maybe that's more of a all of the teams level. If you look at specific teams, you can look at other things. So in GroundControl, we like to look at things like a team happiness, right? Are they still doing well? Are they confident enough that they have enough capabilities to move forward? So that helps you to see if there's enough specialties in your team, right? And you can, that same thing, you also can measure true culture maybe to see if there is traits in the people that you need, enough traits in the people that you need, or capabilities. And then what was the other layer that you were asking for?
More at the portfolio level, so that management looking at multiple ventures.
Right, so you can look at different things there. One thing is interesting, if you want to understand the balance in your portfolio, so if you want to understand if you need to do corporate venturing at all, or at what percentage, right? You hear a lot about, hey, I have to invest in my core and in adjacent and transformationals, and then people come up with these percentages of 70, 20, 10, right? But what you want to do is look at your whole portfolio and your portfolio distribution, and then understand if your portfolio of business models, not products per se, but your portfolio of business models actually is fading or not, right? Are your business models that you're currently using in danger of fading or not? So how much is there a pressure on you to start looking for new business models or markets or not? And that will depend the amount of investment that you have to do in corporate venturing, and that in turn will tell you that how many of these themes or in what directions you want to look for more investments in corporate venturing.
Absolutely, I'm a big fan of looking at a portfolio level and not just sort of distributing budget between projects, but actually looking at what they're trying to achieve. I think we're coming up on time now, but one last question is, we've got all these methods now and all these tools and metrics that we can use, but often having the tool is not enough to actually make it implemented inside a company. What do you see as some of the big hurdles that small teams or large teams in large corporates have when trying to introduce the decision makers to a new way about measuring progress or seeing whether projects are on track or not?
I think the biggest hurdles are actually that it's introduced as just one thing, and it's essentially a system. We've seen the same thing with Lean Startup, right? People said, this is Lean Startup, we're going to try it within a corporate. But then they after dismissed it and said, oh, that doesn't work within a corporate. Lean Startup is nice. We can be more customer centric with it. Let's introduce it with our agile teams. And that's it. That's where it left at. But I think that whole system, there's a whole system of new indicators, a systematic way of validating or invalidating a business model, as well as temporary new processes that you need. And that becomes a whole new system that you need to build next to the system that you already know. And that means there's far more stakeholders involved, and that means the board needs to be truly involved and committed to set up that whole new system. And that's a different conversation than just introducing new indicators or just introducing a new way of working.
Absolutely. It's the acceptance that something needs to change and then the acceptance of what will actually change. Those can be very challenging conversations, especially with people whose job is reliant on the previous set of indicators that have always existed in the company.
It should still exist. They can just be combined and maybe enriched with a new system that has new indicators.
Perfect. Esther, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking with you. I look forward to the book coming out. I'll get a link to the pre-orders down in the description below, or maybe if you're listening to this podcast in the future, it's already been out. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. If people want to find out more about you, your work, the book, whatever you'd like to tell them about, what's the best place they can go to find out more?
Either innovationaccountingbook.com or to GroundControl.com.
Perfect. I'll make sure to get those links down in the description below. Esther, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders, and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they're backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.